A blizzard howled through the quiet mountain town, freezing roads and leaving travelers stranded. In the middle of the storm, a small, warmly lit cottage glowed like a beacon. Inside, a kind-hearted old lady noticed a group of shivering bikers struggling to find shelter, and decided to open her door to strangers in need. The mountain wind howled like a wild animal, whipping snow across the narrow road and turning the world into a white blur. Visibility was almost non-existent, and the few brave travelers on the icy highways were fighting every step just to keep moving. 15 bikers, each bundled in soaked leather jackets and helmets frosted over with snow, struggled along the shoulder, pushing their heavy motorcycles inch by inch. Tires skidded, chains rattled, and each gust of wind threatened to topple them onto the frozen ground. The storm had arrived unexpectedly, trapping them far from home and far from safety. Margaret, a kind-hearted woman in her 70s, sat in her small cottage, sipping hot tea by the flickering fireplace. She could hear the wind rattling her windows, but inside, her home was warm and inviting. A light snow dusted her garden, and smoke curled lazily from the chimney. She glanced out the window and froze for a moment. A group of figures emerged from the white haze, struggling with their bikes, their faces tense and pale. Her heart went out to them instantly. Without a second thought, Margaret set her cup down and hurried to the door. She opened it wide, and the warm golden light spilled out into the storm. The cold wind hit her briefly, but she barely noticed. Her concern was entirely with the stranded travelers. "Come in. Come in out of the snow," she called, her voice carrying over the howl of the blizzard. The biker's head snapped toward the cottage, eyes lighting up with relief. They had been riding for hours, their fingers numb, teeth chattering, and hearts racing with anxiety. One by one, they approached, their snow-covered boots crunching against the frozen driveway. Margaret guided them inside with blankets and towels, making sure each shivering body found warmth. The motorcycles, lined up haphazardly outside, gleamed under the soft glow of her porch light, coated with ice and frost. Inside, the modest cottage felt impossibly small, yet it brimmed with life as the bikers settled near the fire, rubbing their hands together and sipping steaming cocoa. Margaret moved quickly, offering sandwiches she had prepared earlier and making room wherever she could. She looked at their faces, tired, wet, and frightened, and her heart swelled with empathy. They were strangers, yet in that moment, they became part of her little world. That single act, opening her door to the storm, was a choice, a simple gesture that carried immense weight. Little did she know, this night would be remembered for years, not just for the snowstorm, but for the warmth of one woman's heart amid the frozen chaos. Inside Margaret's cozy cottage, the air was thick with warmth and the scent of freshly baked bread and simmering soup. The storm outside rattled the windows and moaned around the roof, but inside, there was safety, comfort, and a sense of calm that seemed almost magical compared to the chaos outside. One by one, the bikers peeled off their soaked jackets and gloves, leaving a trail of snow across the floor, and Margaret guided them to chairs and couches she had pushed together to create a makeshift gathering space. She knelt beside one young man whose hands were still shaking from the cold. "Here, take this," she said, offering a steaming mug of cocoa. He accepted it with a grateful smile, his teeth chattering as the warmth slowly seeped through him. Another biker, a tall woman with frost clinging to her hair, sank into a chair, rubbing her arms as if trying to wring out the chill. Margaret handed her a thick blanket and a reassuring smile. "You're safe now," she said simply, and the words carried more weight than any grand gesture ever could. The bikers, strangers moments ago, began to relax in the glow of the fire. They laughed quietly at shared stories of the treacherous ride, their camaraderie growing in the shared relief of being out of the storm. Margaret moved among them tirelessly, fetching towels, setting plates of warm food, and checking to make sure everyone had enough to drink. She didn't ask for anything in return, there was no expectation, only a genuine desire to help those who had been caught in the mercy of the blizzard. As the night wore on, the storm outside raged with greater intensity. The bikers slowly approached her, removing their helmets and gloves, revealing smiles beneath rugged, weathered faces. "We can't thank you enough," Big Tom said softly. "Last night, you reminded us what it means to care for one another. You didn't see it as heroic, you just opened your home. But to us, it was everything." Margaret's hands trembled as she clutched the porch railing, overwhelmed. She never imagined that a simple act, offering warmth, tea, and a place to rest, could ripple outward so powerfully. Each nod, each glance, and each smile from the bikers conveyed a deep, wordless message: kindness begets kindness, and even the smallest gestures can leave a legacy far greater than we expect. The morning sun glinted off the motorcycles, the snow, and the hopeful faces of the bikers. Margaret's heart swelled with a joy that came from realizing something profound: in a world that often feels cold and indifferent, humanity, true, selfless humanity, still shone brightly, capable of turning ordinary people into extraordinary heroes. The morning air was crisp and filled with the lingering scent of pine and snow as Margaret stepped onto her porch. The 100 motorcycles stood like a silent army, engines now quiet, lined up neatly in the driveway and along the street. The bikers, their leather jackets dusted with frost, formed a semicircle around her, faces warm with gratitude and admiration. Margaret's hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the overwhelming feeling of being seen, valued, and celebrated for something she had considered a small act. Big Tom stepped forward once more, his voice steady but carrying emotion. "Margaret, last night you reminded us that compassion isn't measured by wealth or power, but by courage and the willingness to care. You took care of us when we needed it most. You gave us more than warmth, you gave us dignity." Margaret shook her head, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. "I just opened my door. Anyone would have done the same." "No," another biker said softly, stepping forward. "Not anyone. Not everyone. It takes heart. You showed us what it means to trust, to give without expecting, and to treat people like humans first, not strangers second." The bikers began handing her small tokens: a scarf, a thermos, even a carefully folded flag adorned with a handwritten note. Each item represented a story, a memory from the storm, and their collective gratitude. Margaret's chest swelled with emotion. The little gestures, the quiet thank yous, all wove together into a tapestry of human connection stronger than she had ever imagined. Then, one by one, the bikers mounted their motorcycles, revving engines in unison. The sound was thunderous yet rhythmic, a salute in its own right. Margaret covered her mouth, choking back a sob as the entire group slowly circled the yard before riding off down the street, leaving her in silence. But this silence was different. It was not lonely. It was a resonance of love and shared humanity, a reminder that kindness, even in its simplest form, leaves a lasting echo. Margaret stood there for a long while, watching the last motorcycle disappear into the horizon. She felt lighter, her heart buoyed by the realization that what she had given, warmth, shelter, and compassion, had multiplied beyond her expectations. The storm that once seemed terrifying and isolating had been transformed into a story of hope, community, and unshakable humanity. From that day forward, Margaret knew one undeniable truth: even the smallest act of kindness could create ripples far larger than one could ever imagine, and the world, though often harsh, was still filled with people capable of extraordinary goodness.